Hello, everyone. This is part 1 of session 25 of Pre-Socratics to Augustine, also called History of Philosophy 1. We are now talking about Augustine, and in the title of our class, Pre-Socratics to Augustine, we're already signaling that this is where we end. Augustine is no longer part of Hellenistic philosophy. He is trained by reading, on the one hand, Neoplatonist authors, on the other hand, a lot of Cicero. And Cicero engages with Hellenistic philosophy. Cicero kind of self-identifies as an academic skeptic, even though he's not quite as radical, maybe, as some earlier academic skeptics. So Augustine has a wide-ranging education, but he also converts to Christianity, and he becomes one of the most important Christian philosophers. Now, in turning to Christianity, he also transforms a lot of questions and ideas and concepts and frameworks, really, for doing philosophy that he inherits or learns from studying the ancients, but also truly sort of takes further. And the thought of ending with Augustine is to give you starting points for thinking about the next steps in the history of philosophy. For example, if you were to take the next class in our sequence, then you would be engaging with a lot of the ideas that we find in Augustine. For our class, we only read selections from one treatise on the Trinity, De Trinitate in Latin, from books 10 and 15. And we read these selections because we want to focus on two really fundamental themes. And the theme that I discuss in this recording is how Augustine thinks of the mind. Now, that relates to how he also rethinks what skepticism is, what we would have to do if we wanted to refute skepticism. He does no longer use primarily the language or vocabulary or conceptual framework of ancient skepticism, which, as we saw, is that we assent to impressions or don't assent to impressions. In other words, suspend judgment on impressions. So in this discussion between Stoics and skeptics, the thought was, well, the Stoics give us conditions for when is it safe to assent to an impression, and the skeptics say, no, actually, there are reasons not to assent, and hence we are going to suspend judgment. So the discussion is kind of framed in these terms, that we have thoughts which are called impressions, and then we somehow either accept them or reject them or suspend judgment on them. But modern skepticism, as I'm sure you have heard in other contexts, kind of crucially uses the notion of doubt. And often the core question is, what is it that we can doubt? That is not an ancient question. That was not part of the discussion between the skeptics and the Stoics, as we saw. But Augustine, as it were, transforms the discussion in such a way that that comes to be a crucial question. So he comes up with this idea that we can doubt a lot of things, but we cannot doubt, he thinks, that we live, that we remember, that we will, that we think, that we understand. So the idea is that, as where you think kind of in the first person singular, I remember such and such, or I judge something to be the case, or I understand something. And while you're doing that, you might misremember. That is something that could go wrong, but you cannot be wrong about the very fact that you remember. Or you judge something to be the case, and it might well be the case that your judgment is false, but you're not going to be wrong about the fact that you judge such and such. That is, we are not in doubt, and we cannot be in doubt, according to Augustine, about our own mental activities. And now comes the further idea that is a little less famous than this question, what is it that we can doubt? And that is the idea that, according to Augustine, the mind is nothing other than these activities: thinking, understanding, remembering, judging, willing, and so on. Why is that important? Augustine thinks that it is one of the most fundamental flaws in Hellenistic philosophy, which he rejects for many reasons, that both Stoics and Epicureans, in his terms, take the mind to be a substance. And that, according to Augustine, is a huge mistake. Instead, we should think that really all there is to the mind is to be found in these mental activities. And the question, the kind of further question, well, what is the mind? What kind of stuff? Is it air? Is it the brain? Is it whatever? That question is fundamentally misguided. And the assignment for today is just to read the text closely and ask yourself, why does Augustine think that the mind is nothing other than cognitive activity, and why is it a mistake to even ask what else, what kind of substance it could be?